and welcome to Discard. Today we have another episode of Gameroom Tours. This is the series where we take in pictures or videos of other people's collections so we can take a look around them, look for cool display ideas, and find all sorts of awesome stuff along the way. This is episode 11, I believe. Let's take a look. So before getting into the first collection, I always like to tell people that you too can send in pictures or videos of your collection. There's going to be a link in the description that goes to a video that explains exactly how you can go about sending in your videos or your pictures of your collection. Your collection could be small, could be big, it could have tons of games, it could have 5 games. It doesn't really matter if you've got the stuff to back it up, the things to talk about in your photos, in your videos, then it could show up on Discard. So the first game room that we have that came in today comes in from Simon, and Simon has one of the coolest, the calmest, the nicest collections I've seen in a very long time. I really wanted to use this first shot here. It's a fantastic space, and you get a really good example of what this game room is all about right off the bat. One of the first things that hit me was the color palette in this room has this white and kind of gray and like brown tones in there. Kind of gives you this beachy vibe, but just a very clean adult feeling to this space. Picture is also expertly set up. You have the plant on the nice table there with a couple controllers sitting there. You got the nice television just right in front of that zone, which looks like a perfect place to pick up your controllers from. But in this photo, you can also see that they have this Kallax unit off to the left. Yes, I know that's not how you pronounce it, but it's the way I've always said it, and I'm just sticking to my guns, you know? Sometimes you gotta say something the way you say it, and then you get stuck with it. It's just the way it is. Forget about it. So in the next shot, you get a really good, big, wide shot of the room. Now we're kind of sitting back in the corner. We got the TV off to our right there, kind of against the wall, and you get a real sense of the size of this space. And this may not be the biggest space, but the way they've painted it, the way it's laid out, and all of this natural light coming into this space really leads to it feeling really open and big. To the left side, you can see that table again, and you can see more of these plants that are in the space. I'm not sure if these are real or fake plants, but either way, they're real enough to fool me if they're fake plants. Now at the far back, you can see not only are they using the space for console gaming and the television itself, but they're also utilizing it for their computers. So they've got like a double desk set up back there for 2 people to sit down and be able to use a computer next to each other, which is really awesome. And then finally getting up close with their shelf, you can see that they have most of their games in this location. This is where they have their organization as well as display. And they seem to have games from all sorts of different eras of gaming, as well as Switch and DS and 3DS games kind of put into here. But the thing that I think is really important here and is really cool is the fact that every little part of this shelf has been micromanaged and it has been displayed. Just moving from the left to the right on the top shelf, you can see that they have figures laid out perfectly. You have Starlink and Star Fox stuff kind of laying there to the right of that. And then you have a bunch of Nintendo Switch games, which are using one of my favorite methods, which I talked about in one of my shelf hacks videos, where they've taken something in the back there and raised up their games. Especially in these cube style shelves, you can get a lot more headspace in these units. So you're actually able to make a step up of your Nintendo Switch games. Some games that this won't work for necessarily. It can be kind of finicky where you try to pull a game out of the back if you don't have your sizing correct. But you can essentially make a riser in the back out of foam core and have a very professional look. Very cheap. And then getting to the right, they have some awesome Zelda collectibles and games. I'm really stoked about this set of shelves. And what's really interesting is when you start looking into the rest of the shelves, you'll notice a theme with a lot of the display stands, and that's Lego. Throughout this entire collection, you'll find these little angled stands, and they're completely made out of Lego, and they kind of do a really good job with them. I've seen a lot of terrible Lego display stands that have been sent in to me that are all different colors, and they're puke colors and they look terrible, and I never want to show them on Discard ever. But when I see them done like this, it definitely makes me feel like I should probably make a video on this. On top of these Lego stands, they're also just utilizing basic methods of display, turning games on angles to give a little bit more interest. It's really cool because these shelves can be completely modular. You can make each box its own thing. I see that happen all the time where boxes have their own theme, but definitely a really cool collection of items in this main shelf in this room. I will also say at the bottom cubes of this shelf, they have a really nice organization method laid out. I really recommend this to anybody who wants to store or organize stuff into their cube cube style shelves. I have some Ziploc boxes that I use for some of my 3D printing filament, and I will tuck those into my cube style shelf. And that's probably a good way to put away some of those things that you're not necessarily going to be displaying. This like little layout that they have up here is perfect in my opinion. They've taken a few little things, laid them out here on top of the cube style shelf, and they make it look really good. I don't think anybody could deny that this is much better than the majority of our game rooms and collections when it comes to the tops of our shelves. And then we get to the actual TV stand itself, and I definitely had to talk about this because there's a few more interesting things to talk about in here. But from the right, you can see that they have their Nintendo Switch kind of in its dock, playing a game, apparently Mario Kart, which is awesome. But to the left of that, you also have kind of a standby zone for a couple Switch games. So they have a couple games sitting there, and those are again on some of these Lego display stands that they've kind of put together. The rest of that level of the TV stand is kind of just expertly organized and kept very simple. There's not a bunch of figures. You don't have hundreds of games sitting in here or things just kind of clogging up the zone. But sometimes for me, my eye can be led to other zones that are really boring and they're not so interesting. And in this case, I think these boring areas at the bottom of this TV stand say a lot more about the person and how much they want to display their collection than anything else. And you have a few black boxes down here, and I would imagine those are used for just different odds and ends. Some of these pieces of controllers and maybe extra controllers that aren't worth displaying, and other items of the game room that you don't want to have out. And they could just simply put them into these black boxes and call it good. And then looking back towards the couch that we were kind of next to when we took those first shots of this room and looked around, but next to that couch, there's also this little tiny shelf there that's being used for some of these console boxes. I thought that was a really nice touch. Another little fake plant or real plant, I'm not sure, on top of that shelf, as well as a little ledge up there for a couple pictures, which is really nice. And then closing thoughts about this game room, as we go through some of these final pictures, they have these really cool photos of what their game room looks like at night with their LEDs in it and how it kind of lights up the space. You can really see how these bright walls kind of carry the light around. So definitely a really cool game room to take a look at. A amazing space, a very adult space, really open and airy. Feels like the air in this room would be really fresh for some reason. I have no idea why, but I really like this collection. Thank you very much to Simon for sending it in. Up next, we have Matthew's collection. I picked this collection because it just really takes on a lot of the different display ideas that are out there and utilizes them in a really well done fashion. The first shot that we have from Matthew is of his shelving units that have most of his games. I could probably guess for the most part, most of these are coming from Ikea, because he has a lot of Ikea accessories kind of mixed in here. And speaking entirely about these kind of add-ons that Ikea has, you can take a look at these kind of angled sections here in the middle of these shelves. Now, I had a video a while back on these angled shelves from Ikea, and they're just super cool. I can't believe anybody would not get these if they had a Billy bookcase. They're just incredibly handy. They do so many different things to really maximize a collection. It's insane. And you can see here he's using a lot of his consoles and putting those on top of these, and you get that perfect angle of a console where you can see all the outlines and the curves and the logos. It's just that perfect angle, that kind of slightly top-down look on those consoles. He's also got a couple of these awesome like almanac style books for these consoles. And again, this looks like another person who's been collecting for a long time. A lot of different eras of gaming here, from N64 to Wii to PlayStation and PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360. There's a lot of different styles of games in here from all sorts of different consoles. I always like to see a collection like this because, you know, if you kind of shop around, you'll find out that there's good games on every single console that there's ever been. And for the most part, on these two right shelves, he's made the main display area for those consoles there on those angled shelves, and the rest of it is going to be all spines. So it looks really clean, really nice. There's not too much on the shelves in the way of kind of, you know, making it messy and adding tons of amiibo out front and figures everywhere and doing all sorts of stuff. It's very clean and organized space, which I really respect. Now for those things specifically, he's taken a smaller shelf and put it next to these Billy bookcases, and he's put his odds and ends there. He's put his figures there. He's got a lot of these odd items that go with the consoles there, kind of laid out to be displayed, as well as an easy place to grab them from. But I do really respect the figure setup. He doesn't have a ton of stuff just kind of clogging it up. Everything's kind of spaced nicely. So that's definitely a nice, cool shelf. But what's even cooler is the smaller little shelf that is down to the left of this one. And I guess all these shelves are in a very tiered layout from biggest to smallest on the left. But this little shelf in the lower left is there for specifically gaming related hats. And another cool place of this room is this shot that he sent in, and it's all these really cool floating shelves that he has laid out here on his wall. Instead of going with a traditional shelf here, we went with something very modern. These floating shelves really fit the bill for that. They also give you a really good place to put some of your odds and ends, some figures, some odd items like a sword. It's also a place for special editions. You know, you have a lot of these big box special editions on the top of those shelves there, and it's just a good place to put those things because on a normal shelf they're not going to fit, or you're going to have to resize your shelves in weird ways. It just makes a big bunch of confusion. These little floating lead shelves are essentially little built-in stands with that little lip at the front. Makes for a perfect, easy stand for whatever it is that will fit into the stand, and it does really well. I think it looks great. There's also no complication from this kind of stand. You know, you don't have to worry about taking it out or the stand breaking or having any issues with it. It just works. You go up, you grab your handheld, you go and you start playing it, you're good to go. He also has this big rail that kind of goes along the wall here. And what I believe this is actually a long, I want to say dovetail, but it's two grooves that kind of interlock to each other. And you take one groove, you put it on the back of your item that you want to hang, and then you have, of course, the big long board that has its own little angle to it, so that they just interlock into each other and hang. This is really useful if you have a bunch of pictures or things that you want to hang on your wall. Maybe you want to switch things out or mess with the spacing all the time. This is optimum for that kind of a layout. And then one of the final focal points of this collection, there's a couple other areas, but one of the final big mama jamas of this whole collection here is this area here with the CRT TV. But starting at this little cube style shelf at the left, it looks really nice. It has some legs underneath it to kind of keep it up off the ground. It gives it a really modern feel as opposed to not putting those legs on. I know Ikea has that optional for their Kallax units as well. But this is a really nice adult setup for just grabbing your record, immediately putting it into your turntable, and just rocking out to your music, good to go, no problems whatsoever. And it's also really cool to see collector mounts being used for vinyl records on the wall there behind the TV. I've made 2 videos on collector mounts for displaying all sorts of gaming related stuff. There are so many uses for these things. You could display things from NES boxed games to DS games to vinyl records that are gaming related, or magazines and Nintendo powers. I mean, the sky is the limit with what you can do with those collector mounts. They're fantastic. Looks like he has a pretty sturdy TV stand there that's made completely out of wood, which is a really good idea if you have a massive CRT TV sitting on top of it. A lot of games kind of sitting down in there, but there's one thing that's really interesting to me, and that's on top of the CRT TV, you have this Club Nintendo display stand. A few years ago, I also grabbed one of these Club Nintendo display stands for my DS and 3DS games. And they work really well. I mean, they look really cool because they're Mario hats. They have the Club Nintendo logo on the side, the big M for the Mario hat. I mean, what's not to love about these? And then the far right, he has another cube style shelf, which he's filled with a bunch of gaming related magazines. This is another example of just utilizing shelves for specific things instead of kind of mixing it all together and making just a mess of things. I really like having a location just for those Nintendo powers and those game guides. It's really cool. And the third thing he's got wall mounted in this room is a bunch of posters. He's got 6 different posters, all kind of hung up on the wall really nice and perfectly. Seems like he's really good at wall mounting things from the looks of his collection overall. And one of the last things I wanted to talk about, he has a double TV setup in this space. But what's really cool about these TVs is at the back side, and that's the cord management side of things. He's got these little curtains back there that kind of tuck away the cord management, which he's essentially cut 2 pieces of pegboard and stuck it to the back side of these TV stands, which I think is a very genius move. I've seen this recently where people have been taking pegboard and putting it to the back side of cube style shelves or their TV stands, and then you can literally mount things to that pegboard without any issue and not being able to see it from the front, which is really ideal. But that's Matthew's collection. Glad he sent it in because there's a lot of really cool wall mount ideas in here that I want to play with. There's some awesome shelves. I love how he's used that angled shelf to his advantage and really getting those consoles looking awesome along with those books. But just a lot of visual places of interest within the space, and it's not a huge space. This is not a massive room. So all you people talking about a tiny space, take a look at these Gameroom videos. What are you doing? Look at this collection, it's awesome. And then quickly and finally today I wanted to go over Amos's collection, another collection that came in, was saying something about having a complete Wii U collection, which I think is really awesome. and I took a look into there to find some really cool and inexpensive display ideas that I definitely recommend. This first shot, I would imagine, is in kind of an entryway because you have the shoes there as well as some umbrellas, and usually that's by a doorway or something like that. But he's got his shelf completely decked out with tons of video games, and what I can imagine is the complete collection of Wii U games there on the lower left, which is absolutely awesome. It's always really cool to see a full collection of games from any console. Wii U is really awesome to collect for. There's been not a ton of video games, so it's kind of doable, but some of those games are really rare and hard to come by, especially now. Another part of his space has this cool kind of DIY arcade setup, which is pretty awesome. Looks like a pretty simple setup to kind of put together. He's done a good job of kind of hiding the cords that go to the TV. You can see there's this white kind of bar going down the center, and that's used to kind of conduit your cords all the way down to the bottom so you don't have these big hanging things in the way. So shout out to him for kind of cleaning that up. It's a million times better than if you let those cords just hang anywhere they wanted to be. And one of the shelves in his space is definitely organized around displaying games, and he's used these coin stands that I've recommended in the past. These are super cheap. You can get tons of them for barely any money at all. You can find them on eBay, you can find them on Amazon. These coin stands are everywhere. Adjustable, you can have your games on angles, you can have them sitting straight up and down. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. Check out the video later. But he's definitely got a bunch of them, and he's using them to hold up a ton of his games throughout this shelf. And here's yet another shelf with a bunch of modern games. You got your Switch and your PlayStation 4 games kind of hanging out in here. And you have a bunch of Super Nintendo games as well. Up at the top, you can see he's using more of those coin stands to hold his handhelds, which looks really nice. And the last part of this collection that I wanted to talk about was his wall-mounted controllers. Not only does he have retro controllers, but he also has modern controllers on there. And these Wii blasters, I'm not sure what the name of those was originally, but that's a crazy cool thing to add to your wall as well on top of your normal controllers. And then up to the right of this picture, I think we have a zoomed in shot of this. There is this awesome retro cartridge holder from back in the day, and I really like these. You can find these super cheap on eBay and at gaming conventions and have a cool place to display your games. But one of the things a lot of people forget about that these do is they come with the ability to be wall mounted. It's really one of the original ideas of the design. But yeah, Amos's collection has a bunch of little display nooks and crannies throughout it. He's got another floating shelf in there as well, and just a lot of games. And shout out to that complete Wii U collection. That is absolutely awesome. So that's all the game rooms, game collections, pictures and photos that we have for today's game room tours. If you're interested in sending in pictures or videos of your game collection, remember that link is in the description to a video that explains exactly how to go about doing that. So definitely check that out. But thank you very much to everyone who sent in their game collections. I really appreciate it. It helps keep game room tours going, and I want to keep it going. It's a lot of fun to look for these ideas. It helps the other goals of the channel, which is finding display ideas for game rooms. If you are interested in that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button if you like the video, and hit the bell if you want to see these videos when they come out and when they're fresh. Because a lot of these display ideas that I do review go out of stock fairly quickly. But outside of that, I hope you have a fantastic day today and collect what you love.
I've been looking for a reason to look the other way. Been waiting here forever. It's getting so